If you are continuously throwing money away at boxing gloves simply because they start to smell, the padding starts to break away, or they're starting to tear, stick around because I'm going to explain exactly why you need 2 or even 3 pairs of boxing gloves. Unless you box once every blue moon, or unless you like to collect gear like I do, investing in a single pair of boxing gloves for your training is a sure way for you to end up spending much more money in the long run. So let me help you stop the stinking, stop the padding breaking down, and let me explain why you need to invest in at least 1 more pair of gloves to actually save money in the long run. And the first reason you're going to want to invest in a second pair of boxing gloves is to increase their longevity. Now imagine you bought yourself a pair of shoes that you took for a run, that you went on for a hike, that you took to CrossFit, that you took to the gym, that you took to work, and now you can start to picture and start to assume why you would need more than 1 pair to basically suit different lifestyles and different needs. The same principle goes exactly for boxing gloves or any other fight gear. You want to ensure you cycle the products to ensure that they have the longest shelf life possible. And while you could say, hey, maybe I should just take slightly better care of my gloves, make sure I wear hand wraps every time, maybe use a glove deodorizer, or intend to hang them out after training with as efficient time as possible. But that's the issue, is that many people who train multiple times a week don't have the ability to let their products to dry out naturally, which is exactly why you should have at least 2 or even 3 pairs of boxing gloves or shin guards, you name it, to make sure that they last a lifetime. And the second reason you're going to want to have a second pair of boxing gloves is due to the weight factor. If you didn't know, boxing gloves are specifically measured by their weight, or ounces. Basically, 4-ounce gloves are what you'd expect to start with for a child, and 8 ounces for a teenager and an adult. As a quick reference, any weighted boxing glove can be used as a training glove, but 8 to 10 ounces are specifically used for in-ring competition or professional bouts, whether it's boxing, Muay Thai, or kickboxing. So 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, and heavier are naturally used for training purposes. Your 8s and 10s are used for your professional ring fighting. And while you could use a set of heavier boxing gloves to do all the training, your bag work, your pad work, and your sparring, you're going to run back into the same issue that we just went over. So as a quick recommendation, get yourself a lighter pair for bag work and pad work, and a heavier set for sparring. Usually 8 to 12 ounces for bag and pad work depending on your weight, and 14, 16 or 18 ounces for sparring depending on your weight also. The third reason blends a little bit into number 2. Weights can have a lot to do with the specific types of training as well, but there are gloves made in the market that are specifically made for bag work, made for pad work, and made for sparring. As an example, there are actually specific names for these gloves. Some are called training gloves, some are called bag gloves, some are called fight gloves, and some are definitely called sparring gloves. Bag mitts, or bag gloves for example, are essentially a lightweight boxing glove with very minimal materials used. They're usually measured by their hand size rather than their weight, and they're basically used for honesty, light to speedy bag work. They're not designed to protect you, they're more designed to hone your skill. Training gloves are very simple. They're basically another name for an all-rounder boxing glove. Some training gloves maybe aren't built for sparring depending on their weight, and some definitely can be. Fight gloves are very self-explanatory. Fight gloves are usually built within specific guidelines to be very close to being on weight, and they're built to specific needs of the commissions they're going to be used under. So either WBC or British Boxing Council, just to name a few. And lastly, sparring gloves, as you may have guessed, are built for exactly that. They're usually built with additional features, maybe better padding, softer padding, a lot more padding in terms of trying to help protect your hands from getting any damage, and also protecting your opponent from getting too much damage. So for this reason alone, you can realistically have 3 sets of gloves. Bag gloves for bag work, training gloves for pad work, and then sparring gloves for sparring. And the last reason to invest in another set of boxing gloves is due to boxing gloves having different padding styles. Unlike the previous glove categories mentioned, gloves can also be named after the type of padding that they use. Essentially, you're going to have different types of gloves out there that provide you with different levels of shock absorption and different levels of feedback. Some boxing gloves are built with the intent of basically feeling as realistic as possible, with slightly less padding, maybe the way it's shaped, whereas on the flip side you can have gloves with a lot of padding over the knuckles, essentially to help protect your hands, but in turn robbing you of that amazing sensation when you hit that punch exactly where you wanted it to. And these boxing gloves are typically known as puncher's gloves, pillow gloves, horsehair gloves, and IMF gloves. Pillow gloves, as the name suggests, is exactly that. They're very broken in gloves, meaning that when you put your hands into it, it doesn't feel like you need to mold it into the right shaping around your hand. They're very comfortable for the outset. A good example of this is a set of winning boxing gloves, as they are especially well known across the world for their hand comfort. And while pillow gloves may feel extremely comfortable with all the soft foams that surround your hand, they're not necessarily the most protective gloves, and that's similar to the next type we're about to go over. Puncher's gloves are built for a violently beautiful intention. You're going to feel fantastic feedback in them, and the person that you're going to be hitting them with is absolutely going to feel every punch. They usually feel like you've only got a couple of millimeters between the knuckles and the bag that you're hitting. The knuckle padding can be very fine or very sharp, and also it's a very beloved and very respected glove, especially in the Mexican boxing community. And it's for the same reason that you see many puncher's gloves actually manufactured out of Mexico. You've got brands like Salvadore, No Boxing, No Life, Clado Reyes. They've got what they call a harsh or a square shoulder, so you really feel like you're hitting with your two knuckles. So a very honest, very realistic type of boxing glove. And puncher's gloves are made with either foam-based padding, horsehair padding, or even a combination of both. Speaking of horsehair, this is the glove we're going to talk about next, which is also one of the rarest and coincidentally can also be referred to as a puncher's glove. Horsehair gloves are your very traditional boxing glove. In the modern era, 99% of gloves out there are made from some sort of foam makeup. You're not necessarily going to see horsehair gloves readily available. There are brands that use them still, like 1v1, your Everlasts, there are Grant Worldwide also, for example. So it is still a very beloved type of glove, but it is a lot rarer to come across nowadays. Essentially, horsehair does feel quite similar to what a puncher's glove does feel like in terms of feedback and shock absorption. However, it's argued that horsehair can sometimes be viewed as either better or worse than foam depending on its quality. And full disclosure, I have tried on horsehair gloves before, but have never really tested them too much. So if you can recommend a pair of horsehair gloves that you think I should try, leave me a comment down below, because I'd love to know what you guys think are the best ones. And lastly, IMF gloves, or also known as injected molded foam gloves, are essentially probably known more for their cheaper construction. You probably see more inexpensive gloves utilize this type of foam, and also I would argue that they're probably more protective, as they're usually quite a bulker, thicker bit of padding, and usually a one piece of foam that's used over the top rather than your typical multi-layered foam constructions. And due to their thickness in padding, you're actually going to miss a lot of that amazing feedback you would receive in other types of gloves, such as puncher's gloves or even pillow gloves. An example of these gloves are the Amazon Basic gloves, which I'm yet to do a review on, but as you can see, I'll actually compare these. When you are comparing apples and oranges, IMFs and multi-layered foams, you can see the shaping difference here. Basically, your IMFs are rounded, very ballooned, whereas your multi-layered foams or even your puncher's gloves, which can also be considered a multi-layered foam glove, usually have more of that squared shoulder, which I referred to earlier. So I hope that has enticed you to invest into a second or third pair of boxing gloves. If it did, leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to check all of my latest uploads that are coming. And if you have any questions regarding this video, leave them down below. And if you're bored or in the mood for any of my content, I'll leave some other videos here. And as always, thanks so much for watching, guys. Can't wait to do another equipment review soon. See you all later.